Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's the Orthodox Muslim, and guess what we have today, man? We have a cute attempt to try to respond to the glaring nativity contradiction in the Gospel of Luke and in the Gospel of Matthew. Let me say, man, that was a terrible response. I find it so insane to me how people, Christian apologists like this doofus, are trying to defend the indefensible, to just put it in the nicest way possible. My friend, it did not work out in your favor. Let's go ahead and react and see what we have. Oh yeah, and before we start the video, remember this is the same guy that when I had only 2,000 subscribers, I offered him a debate. He accepted. We emailed back and forth with Modern Day Debate. We set up a time. It was a 2v2. And guess what? They ghosted and ran away. And not only that, but I offered him the debate of the Prophet Muhammad in the Bible. He emailed me back saying that he is not prepared and informed enough to debate this topic, but he wants to debate the apostolic origin of the Gospels. And so he ended up not even doing any debate. He just ran away. I'm gonna show all the emails and all the messages here, so everybody knows that this guy is a coward who hides behind screens.
The Christians tell us that the Bible is the inerrant, infallible Word of God that is not corrupted and has no contradictions whatsoever. In the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew says that Jesus was born during the reign of King Herod. Now, history is very clear on this. Herod died in 4 BCE, which means if Jesus was born under Herod, it had to be 4 BC or earlier than 4 BC. But then we turn to the Gospel of Luke, and suddenly everything falls apart. Luke claims Jesus was born during a census ordered by Quirinius, the governor of Syria. The problem is Quirinius didn't become governor until 6 CE, about 10 years after Herod's death. This is the only census recorded in that region under Roman rule, and it happened long after Herod was dead. So here's the issue. Matthew says Jesus was born by 4 BCE at the latest. Luke says it was in 6 CE. We're looking at a gap of about a decade. They both simply cannot be true.
This recycled Bart Ehrman lazy meme argument collapses the minute you read the text carefully and check the historical sources. Luke isn't bumbling his dates. He opens his nativity account in Luke 1:5 with, "In the days of Herod, king of Judea." That's not a vague throwaway, that's Luke planting a historical flag. Jesus' birth story is set in Herod's reign. Any reading of Luke 2:2 that throws the timeline into 6 AD would make Luke contradict himself in literally 2 chapters.
Yeah, no, not exactly. It would only be a contradiction under the view that this is divinely inspired. And so God, because he knew exactly what events happened in what timeline, he cannot have contradicted himself. He would have known exactly when the timelines were. We're not saying Luke contradicted himself. We're saying Luke, as a historian writing an account of Christ, made a mistake and conflated 2 historical events. We're not positing a contradiction, my friend.
And Luke explicitly states that Jesus was in his 30s when he started his ministry. That math doesn't add up. And it's not like Luke's clueless about the 86 census under Quirinius. He references it in Acts 5:37, connecting it to Judas the Galilean's revolt. He knows that the census happened after Herod was dead.
Which is exactly why Luke makes a mistake and messes up by placing the birth of Jesus, according to the tradition, in the time of Herod, and also connecting it to the census of Judea at the time.
No, Luke isn't mixing up 2 censuses. He's pointing out 2 separate Quirinian moments. But you're not going to like that answer, are you?
Some apologists have tried to argue that maybe there was an earlier census under Quirinius, but historians and Roman records are crystal clear. There was no earlier census. Luke's timeline simply does not fit with Matthew's. This is not some minor error. This is a huge contradiction about the time of Jesus' birth. If these Gospels are inspired and historically accurate, then why can't they agree on such a basic detail?
There's a lot of problems here. First, let's break down Luke 2:2, which reads, "This was the first registration when Quirinius was governing Syria." Orthodox Muslim assumes that this must be the famous 86 census, but the Greek word prote, first, can also mean former or earlier, like we see in John 1:15 or John 15:18. Luke's likely saying that this was the earlier census associated with Quirinius, not the later one that sparked the tax revolt. And once you see that, the contradiction evaporates.
Yeah, it's a clever try, but no, it doesn't, my friend. You actually confirmed that whether prote means earliest or earlier or first, you confirm that this census being mentioned in Luke chapter 2 must be the first or the earliest census done while Quirinius is governor of Syria. You're trying to posit at least two censuses that took place, an earlier one and a second one in AD 6. However, that doesn't work out in your favor because there is no evidence of any other census other than the AD 6 census that's connected to Quirinius. Therefore, this first census, while Quirinius is governor of Syria, is the same census that's mentioned in the book of Acts.
He also then hand-waves away the idea of an earlier census under Quirinius, like Quirinius only entered the scene in AD 6. But Tacitus in Annals 348 tells us that Quirinius was already a key military commander in Cilicia, which borders Syria, from 12 to 6 BC. He had major influence over the area well before his official governor.
So the passage he's referring to in the Annals by Tacitus, where Quirinius apparently has major influence over the area, actually only says that Quirinius won a military victory in Cilicia and later became an advisor of Gaius Caesar in Armenia. None of that means Quirinius was a governor of Syria, was a legate of Syria, had any authority in Syria, was a ruler of Syria. None of that means anything of that sort. It doesn't mean that he had any kind of administrative role in Syria, which is exactly what Luke says when he uses the verb hegemonio. This always refers in the usage of Luke to somebody in official Roman administrative control. So no, absolutely not. This is speculative and not evidence.
Meanwhile, the former legate of Syria from 9 to 6 BC was Caius Sentius Saturninus. Tertullian explicitly tells us that Saturninus conducted a census in Judea at Augustus's command during this period, lining up perfectly with the 8 BC imperial decree, which I'll discuss in a moment. So why does Luke name drop Quirinius and not Saturninus? It's because Quirinius was the guy on the ground running the show. Roman practice separated the office holder from the guy actually cracking heads and doing the counting.
Absolutely, Tertullian does say that in Against Marcion. He writes that Jesus was born during a census under Saturninus, who was governor in the year 8 BC. Ironically, though, Tertullian contradicts Luke because Tertullian never mentions a Quirinius connected to the census. And by the way, Tertullian is not corroborated by anybody else. There's no evidence that Saturninus conducted a census anyway, but we could grant that no problem. Christians tried to patch this up by saying, well, maybe Augustus issued an empire-wide decree where everybody had to go to their ancestral 1,000-year homeland, and Saturninus ordered it, and Quirinius carried it out. That's absolutely pure speculation. There is no source, there is no evidence, there is no data to suggest that Quirinius is connected to any census done by Saturninus whatsoever. That's simply fan fiction. And by the way, remember, Quirinius is said to be the governor of Syria, according to Luke 2:2. So this census must have taken place when Quirinius became a governor or a ruler or somebody who has administrative control of Syria. But Quirinius, even under Saturninus, never had that control over Syria. And this is the boom of the century on your head, my friend. Judea didn't even become a Roman province until the year 6 AD. What are we doing here, man? So how could Saturninus have conducted a tax-related census in Judea when Judea hadn't even become a Roman province at the time? You doofus, goofy guy. This is so weak. I'm sorry, man. Embarrassing.
So Quirinius was the military enforcer overseeing the census, and Luke uses a Greek word which doesn't require him to be the legate. Luke uses the same verb for Pilate, and Pilate wasn't a legate either. It just means he was ruling or commanding.
There it is, the classic Christian move, the Christian shuffle. When a word does not suit their favor, they start changing what the word means. He is right in saying that Pilate is called by Luke a hegemon or hegemonia. Hegemonio is not exclusive to being a legate or a governor. And so he says, well, Pilate was called governor, hegemon. And so this word has a semantical range. Absolutely not. This word in its consistent usage only refers to offices and titles that have administrative control and administrative roles over regions and authority over cities. For example, Pontius Pilate had authority over Judea, and so he was called the hegemon of Judea. Quirinius is called the hegemon or the hegemonio of Syria because he became governor of Syria in AD 6. Then we have in the book of Acts as well, let me just pull it up here, we have Felix and Festus, and they're called the hegemonio of Judea because they had administrative control over these regions. And so no, you don't call hegemonio governor to some random foot soldier and start speculating that he is the one who is carrying out a census. This is terrible. This is garbage, my friend. Please, when you respond to me next, make sure you respond to me with evidence, with facts, and with substance. Not this. This is terrible.
So no, Luke wasn't inventing a fake census under the wrong governor. Also, Orthodox Muslim is just flat out wrong. There was an earlier census, as I alluded to earlier. Augustus himself brags in the Deeds of Divine Augustus 8 about counting 4 to 5 million citizens empire-wide, starting in 8 BC. Like everything Roman, it rolled out slow, likely hitting Judea around 7 to 6 BC, with Saturninus in charge and Quirinius overseeing the logistics.
The Deeds of the Divine Augustus records citizen censuses in Rome and in Italy, not tax censuses in provinces. Judea wasn't even a province, man. What are you talking about? Judea only became a province in AD 6.
We even have Egyptian papyri that does show that people did register late under Roman censuses and had to return to their ancestral homes. So Joseph and Mary in Bethlehem at 7 to 6 BC under Herod is exactly what we would expect, fitting both Matthew and Luke. It's wild how Muslims bash the Gospels when their own Quran calls them light and guidance and tells Christians to judge by them. Meanwhile, they do backflips for their own Quranic contradictions, but never show the Bible the same charity that their own Quran does.
This has to be the biggest flop of the entire response video. He's claiming that the Papyrus London 904, dated to the year 104 CE in Egypt, is a evidence that the Romans did a census that is empire-wide and told everybody go back to their ancestral homeland. Issue number one. This is dated to the year 104. Not 6 AD, not 8 BC, nowhere near the time of Jesus. Two, this doesn't have anything that mentions going back to your 1,000-year ancestral homeland. It's actually quite the opposite. So, thank you very much. You buried yourself. This was an embarrassing response. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you if you stayed until the end of the video, and I appreciate all of you who even watched any part of the video. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.